Today's reading comes from John chapter 9. As he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." Others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He is a prophet." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking to you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him. Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see and those who do not see may become blind." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
On their birthdays, I often ask my friends or family, what did you learn or relearn this year? Some smile at the question, others smirk, others sneer and evade the question. But I do really want to know, and at this point, I'm kind of just committed to the bit, and so we ask either way. I tell my kids often what my parents told me, that in everything in life, to the extent that it's up to us, we should never stop learning. We should learn from all the great teachers around us, whether they give children's messages, whether they're professional educators, or even the mountains and the trees, the history books, or the toddler tugging at your leg. I remember in school learning about American educator and author and activist Helen Keller in elementary school. And I remember feeling inspired because although she was blind and deaf and mute, she never stopped learning. She forcefully advocated that continuing to learn had enriched her life. And even those who pitied her, even those who assumed she could not learn, they were the ones in the dark. She wrote in her memoir, "My darkness has been filled with the light of learning and of intelligence. And behold, the outer day-lit world was stumbling and groping in social blindness." We should never stop learning, and there is so much to learn, and that's actually what originally drew me to the church to begin with. On the off Sunday that I was at church as a child, I was stunned by how much I did not know and how much I could learn. How did everybody know when to sit down and when to stand up? How did they know what a disciple was? How did everyone know this prayer and that song? And if this was God's house, where did God sleep? And why do bad things happen to these people who love God? I was confused by the women or the men in the pulpit who claimed that they could say something true, something coherent, something with confidence about the greatest mystery in all the universe, an omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent God. How could they know what they claimed they knew when I couldn't even understand why some weeks the claws were green and other weeks they were purple? But most of all, how could anyone be sure that God was at work in this world that I already understood was both beautiful and terrible? A world that at the same day, in the same time, one family could be reunited with a tight embrace, and another in that same moment could be irreversibly and irrevocably torn asunder. I became desperate to know what they knew and to be brought out of this darkness of my confusion. But the more I got to know these Christians with their grand pronouncements, the more I realized they were just fumbling along too. Fumbling in their own darkness, but catching enough glimpses of light to keep them going, to steady them, at least for now. Just to be back in the darkness a few days later, stubbing their toe and grasping for something to hold on to, saying, "Lord, help me." I thought maybe I just hadn't met the right ones, the right kind of Christians, so I just tried to meet all of them. I hung out with the Methodists and the Baptists and the Catholics and even here in the United Church of Christ. I thought maybe there was something that somebody else knew. I found the ones eventually, as a young adult, who were not afraid of books and not threatened by a child's curiosity. I found the ones who insisted that a thirst for knowledge was a God-given gift and not a mark of the beast. And I prayed, and I talked, and I listened, and I studied, and like Reverend Rainsley told our children, I questioned. I questioned and questioned and questioned some more. I never ran out of questions or books, and I'm still working my way through piles of them. But like French composer Michel Legrand is believed to have said, the more I live, the more I learn, and the more I learn, the more I realize, the less I know. Einstein and Socrates, those brainiacs, they're alleged to have said something quite similar. Even C.S. Lewis, the great British writer, cautioned in his book, Out of the Silent Planet, the love of knowledge is a kind of madness. How could that be? In the first letter to the Corinthians, Paul wrote to the Christian community, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Anyone who claims to know something does not yet have the necessary knowledge, but anyone who loves God is known by God. knowing about God is just a small sliver of this Christian faith. Being known by God is where we build something real. Now, let me be clear here. As literacy rates, including biblical literacy rates, continue to decline, I'm not advocating that we join an anti-intellectualist strand of religion that demonizes learning or critical thinking. But I would recommend for myself personally, and perhaps for you, to immediately exit any church that tells you they know everything and tells you they know exactly how to live. And to do it, you just should listen to the person up front, the religious authority, wearing a robe or blue jeans. I will always advocate for a Christian faith that is honest and integrous, one that resists claiming certainty about things that the psalmist said were too wonderful for us to fully understand. Like the evangelist who authored the Gospel of John that we're reading from today, I believe we can become so convinced that we know it all and so sure that we see everything just right that we will miss what is true and what is possible for God. So far in our exploration of the Gospel of John, we read about Jesus calling the disciples and performing these miracles, these signs of who Jesus was. We read weeks ago about how he turned water into wine and how he healed the paralyzed man. As Jesus teaches about new birth and living water and true worship, growing conflict emerges with the religious leaders whose attire was unknown to me, but who questioned Jesus' identity and authority. But Jesus stayed on the move, like we will read about in our Lenten study book. Jesus was always on the road. And by the point of our reading that Elaine read for us this morning, Jesus had identified himself as the source of light and life, leading to sharper division between those who believed and those who saw him as threatening and blasphemous. That takes us to our story from this morning. Walking down the street, Jesus saw that man who had been blind since birth. His disciples asked their teacher, "Who has sinned? Who messed up, this man or his parents, causing him to be born blind?" Jesus said, "You're asking the wrong question if you're playing the blame game here. You're looking for someone to blame, but there's no cause and effect for this man. Look instead for what God can do." He said this and then did something strange. He spits into the dust, the dirt, and he makes this clay paste and he puts it into the man's eye and says, "Go, wash at the pool of Siloam," which means to be sent. The man went and he washed and he saw. Now, of course, the town was buzzing at this point. His relatives who had seen him year after year begging were saying, "Isn't this the one we knew who sat there and begged?" Others said, "Yeah, that's him all right." But others said, "No way, that's some guy who just looks like him. It cannot be him." He looked at them and said, "Yes, it's me. I'm the very one." And they asked him how it happened, and he said a man named Jesus had healed him. "So where is he?" they asked. "I don't know," he said, because off he was again, always on the move. So they marched this man to the religious authorities, as you might recall, similar to last week, because Jesus had done this by breaking a rule. He had done this on the Sabbath, the holy day. The Pharisees grilled the man again on how he had come to see. He explained the whole story yet again, and it caused a split in their ranks. Whenever the truth is revealed, it tends to cause a split in the ranks. Some of the religious authorities said, "Obviously, this Jesus can't be from God. He doesn't follow the rules. Isn't following God about following the rules?" But others countered, how could anyone do something so miraculous and transformative without being from God? They asked the man, who was the one who healed you? You're the one he healed. What do you think? He said, I think he is a prophet. And a prophet, we think sometimes, is someone who sees the future. But in the scriptural witness, a prophet is someone who sees the world as it truly is and as it truly could be and must be. But the religious leaders didn't believe it, didn't believe that this man could be changed in this way. So they go to his parents, who said, are you sure this is your kid? And they said, yeah, I think we would know, and you can talk to him. He can speak for himself. He's a grown-up after all. So they called him back yet again. He's still here on a bit of a trial. And they say, just give God the credit. We know this Jesus is an imposter. And here's where things get interesting, I think. He replied, I don't know anything about that, one way or another. But one thing I do know is that I was blind, and now I see. He does not offer a theological argument or a polished defense. He cites no theologian or rabbi. He is not bothered by where his transformation took place, be it at a cathedral or a car dealership. He simply tells the truth that Jesus changed his life. Faced with questions he could not answer and with debates he could not win, he just decided to bear witness to the one who changed his life. His testimony is offered with the undeniable reality of his transformation. I was blind, but now I see. And perhaps that's all any of us can do who encounter Jesus. We point not to our own insight or to our own perfection, our stack of books or our debate trophies, but to the one who met us in our darkness, to the one who refused to let us go, to the one who would never abandon us, but instead continues to redeem and restore us again and again. We may not have all the answers to every single person's questions, and perhaps we should become equipped with some questions of our own. But the one thing that we do know is about God's grace and how it changes our lives. Of course, this will never be enough for those who would rather be puffed up than to build up others. That's true of many in our egocentric and self-indulgent, distracted and divisive world. It was true back then too. They continued to question the man. They jumped all over him. His answer was insufficient. They could not control him, and so they said to him, "You are nothing but dirt. How dare you talk to us that way?" And they threw him into the street. My skin crawls reading that, even saying it aloud, imagining being told by your religious authorities, you are nothing but dirt, but dust, but ash. My heart breaks with this man, and my heart breaks with all of those whom we do this to today. But we will remember on Wednesday, this Wednesday, Ash Wednesday, Dust Wednesday, Dirt Wednesday, that the dirt has been cleansed and claimed and blessed and redeemed. I recall my favorite Ash Wednesday poem that we'll read the whole thing on Wednesday, where Jan Richardson says, all those days you felt like dust, like dirt, as if all you had to do was turn your face toward the wind and be scattered to the four corners or swept away by the smallest breath as insubstantial. Did you not know what the Holy One can do with dust, with dirt, with ash? God creates and heals and breathes new life, for we are made of dirt and dust. We are limited and imperfect, and yet somehow deeply loved. And oh, what the Holy One can do with dust. When God's beloved are pushed aside, Jesus stops at nothing to find them. He always asks that question that Reverend Rainsley asked our children to ask, how do I love them? And he finds the man. He explains to him who he is and what he's about. He gives that man a new mission, a new purpose, and a new identity, and the man worships and believes. Jesus explained to him that people will be confused. They will confuse holiness with arrogance. The Pharisees, the religious authorities, overheard him saying this and said, "What are you saying about us? You're calling us the blind ones." And Jesus just got on the move again. This exchange between Jesus and the Pharisees and between the religious leaders and this man who was blind reminds me of another exchange between an interviewer and writer Madeleine L'Engle, Christian author who was concerned deeply with both faith and knowledge. They asked, "Do you believe in God without any doubts?" She said, "I believe in God with all my doubts." What about you? In the spirit of today's passage, I'll leave you with some questions to ponder. What truths are just beneath the surface of your life? The truths you have not yet had the courage or space to notice? Where might fear be shaping the questions that you ask, the ones you avoid as you try to discern what is true? And where is Jesus in your life right now, in your joy and confusion, in the places that feel unresolved? My friends, there is so much that I do not know, so much about the future and other people, about the mysteries of God's ways. All of this stretches beyond my understanding, and yet there is one thing I do know, that I was blind, but now I see. Not fully, all the time, I'll admit. I see enough to recognize God's love at work in my life. I see enough to know that grace is real and redemption is possible. And as I blow out the candles on my birthday, I make a wish, the deepest prayer of my heart, that I will learn and relearn this every year for as long as I live. Because God is at work in this beautiful and terrible world, known in the embrace of loved ones, whispering hope to the family torn apart. May we together hold on to the truth that even in our questions, our darkness, God meets us. And may we live from this thing that we know, seeing and loving a little more clearly each day until all is made visible in God's light. Amen.